President Trump fires back.
I think it's a sad day. I think our security is at risk.
He awaits a ruling from a court on whether to reinstate his travel ban. Cabinet holdup.
It's like a bunch of pouting children.
Republican Senator Orrin Hatch scolds Democrats thwarting the president's nominees. Presidential powwow. I talked to two recent White House visitors who sat down with President Trump, talking about pro-life issues and education. And miraculous healing. A priest credits the intercession of a Scottish nun for surviving a near-death experience. On EWTM News Nightly for Wednesday, February 8th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you for joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Donald Trump is slamming the appeals court deliberating his executive order on immigration. He accuses the judges of being politically motivated. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the White House.
Lauren, President Trump isn't backing down on his executive order. He not only says he has the right to enact his travel ban, but he also says the law is so clear, quote, a bad high school student would understand this.
So just listen. Here's what it says. This is what they're arguing.
Speaking to a group of police chiefs and sheriffs, Trump focused in on the language used in a provision detailing presidential powers.
He may, by proclamation, and for such period as he shall deem necessary. So here it is. People coming in. Suspend the entry of all aliens.
The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals is weighing in on Trump's executive order on immigration. It temporarily bans travelers from 7 Muslim-majority countries.
It would be so great for our justice system if they would be able to read a statement and do what's right.
Lawyers from the Justice Department got plenty of pushback during a hearing Tuesday night.
Could the president simply say in the order, we're not going to let any Muslims in?
That's not what the order does here.
The judges also challenged the attorneys general of Washington State and Minnesota, who argue the executive order is unconstitutional.
We just need to prove that it was motivated in part by a desire to harm Muslims. And we have alleged that.
How do you infer that desire if, in fact, the vast majority of Muslims are unaffected?
Well, Your Honor, in part you can infer it from intent evidence.
The president stopped short of calling the court biased, saying he didn't want to do so, especially since they haven't issued a ruling yet. The ruling could be handed down as soon as this week. Lauren?
Wyatt, what was the reaction from the group of police chiefs and sheriffs that President Trump was addressing?
Well, Lauren, there were hundreds of people in attendance, and most of them were more enthusiastic when the president switched gears from discussing his travel ban to promising zero tolerance for violence against law enforcement, reiterating his vow to reduce violence in Chicago. The president said that no one in America should be punished because of their birthplace and that children should be able to play outside without fear. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsbee at the White House. Thank you. Senate Democrats trying to derail Jeff Sessions' confirmation are attacking him for his pro-life views. The dispute over President Trump's Attorney General nominee even led to a rare moment where the Senate punished one of its own for breaking Senate rules. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi is there. Jason.
Lauren, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren tore into Senator Jeff Sessions last night. Democrats are under enormous pressure from their liberal base to oppose President Trump at every turn. But at the end of the day, they don't have enough votes to stop Sessions' confirmation tonight. Pro-life groups praise Senator Jeff Sessions, but Democrats paint him as a threat to abortion and civil rights.
Would anyone be surprised if, as Attorney General, he would support overturning Roe v. Wade given that opportunity?
Sessions' views on Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court ruling legalizing abortion, came up during his confirmation hearing.
It violated the Constitution and really attempted to set policy and not follow law.
Senator Elizabeth Warren was given a rare rebuke last night while quoting Coretta Scott King, widow of the late civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr.
And this is what it said. They are mothers, daughters, sisters, fathers, sons, and brothers.
Mr. President.
They are...
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell defends Sessions.
It's been tough to watch all this good man has been put through in recent weeks.
Democrats are slowing down the cabinet confirmation process. The longest-serving Republican senator says there's a simple explanation.
They hate Donald Trump. The fact is they can't stand the fact that he beat Hillary Clinton, and he did. Well, he became our president. And frankly, they should respect that, whether they like him or not.
We're all getting a little history lesson today. That rule that Elizabeth Warren broke bans senators from speaking badly about the actions or motives of a fellow senator. It came about after a fist fight on the Senate floor back in 1902. Lauren?
Jason, what about the rest of President Trump's cabinet picks? Where do they stand right now?
Well, next up is going to be Representative Tom Price for Health and Human Services Secretary. The Senate is expected to have a procedural vote on him tonight. Democrats are also fighting him because of his opposition to Obamacare as well as abortion.
Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Jason. On her first full day on the job, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos addressed her department and started with a simple introduction.
I'm guessing you already know, but my name is Betsy. And I'm here with you, alongside you, to serve our nation's students.
Secretary DeVos was sworn in last night by Vice President Mike Pence, who cast the tie-breaking vote during her confirmation hearing yesterday afternoon. It followed weeks of protests from Democrats and 2 no votes from Republican senators. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. The search is on for a nun kidnapped in the African country of Mali. The Colombian nun with the Franciscan Sisters of Mary Immaculate was taken from a quiet area in the south of Mali after armed men broke into a parish. They abducted her and stole the church's car. A Vatican news source says local bishops are joining police trying to get information. Yemen's foreign minister is asking for a review of a U.S. raid last month, but he denies reports that the government requested a suspension of American ground operations. The January 28th raid against al-Qaeda militants in central Yemen killed several women and children, and a Navy SEAL. 6 other U.S. troops were also wounded. Britain's House of Commons approves a bill to start Brexit talks. Prime Minister Theresa May earlier clarified how it would affect Britain's stance on immigration.
There will still be immigration from the European Union into the UK, and we want to ensure that the brightest and best are able to come here.
Meanwhile, a petition to prevent President Trump from making a state visit to the UK has received almost 2 million signatures. Supporters say the president's visit would be an embarrassment to the Queen, and the British government has not yet responded. Build bridges and not walls. That was the Holy Father's message, once again, to the faithful during his weekly talk today at the Vatican.
Come appello a non creare muri, ma ponti.
Pope Francis didn't refer to President Trump in his comments, but he added, quote, "A Christian would never say, 'You will pay for that,' end quote." The Holy Father has frequently used this kind of language in urging countries to welcome migrants. The Pope's comments come on a day set aside in the church to reflect on young victims of human trafficking. A former Chinese health minister defends his country's organ transplant program, saying it no longer takes organs from executed inmates. But an international group of medical professionals meeting at the Vatican still questions China. They say the communist nation needs to crack down on the black market sale of human organs and provide evidence of the change. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin joins us from Rome. Mary, why is the presence of the Chinese health official at this week's Vatican conference causing such a stir?
Lauren, this is all taking place against the backdrop of the Vatican trying to improve its relations with China. Dr. Huang is here to speak about organ trafficking, something that Pope Francis has condemned as a new form of slavery. And China is certainly on record for having many abuses in this area of organ trafficking. Dr. Huang having gone on record as in 2011 saying 2/3 of all organ transplants are from executed prisoners, something that they're trying to change. In China, he said as of January 1st, 2015, that practice has been outlawed, but Human Rights Watch groups are saying there's no way to be sure. And these groups are also coming down hard on the Vatican for inviting him here in the first place. But the organizers of the conference here in the Vatican are saying we don't know if there's any way to know for sure if these practices are still taking place in China, but we want to encourage the change.
So what is the current state of relations between China and the Vatican?
Well, when the communists took power in 1949 and kicked out all foreign missionaries, the Catholic Church there was, basically illegal. So you had the underground church, the faithful who went sort of underground, as it's called, and then those who adhere to the official party, the official church of the Chinese state. So there are Catholics living in both camps, if you were. So it's a very delicate situation spiritually and also diplomatically. The Vatican says it has the right to appoint its own bishops, of course, seeing it as a spiritual matter, not a political matter. The Chinese state, however, says this is something political, and they want to have a say in appointing Catholic bishops, another issue that's dividing the Vatican and China, something that they've been working on at least for the past 50 or 60 years. Pope Francis hoping to continue to thaw those relations.
Well, it seems like that's exactly what the Pope is trying to do. He's trying to improve relations between the two countries. Is he going to be successful?
I think you're right, Lauren. I think this conference, the inviting of the Chinese official here to speak at the Vatican despite protests, I think Pope Francis is one, as we know, for building bridges instead of walls, working with apparent foes in hopes to achieve something good together, whether that's fighting poverty, whether that's stopping the organ trafficking. He tries to find ways to work together and hopefully break down those walls.
Mary Shevlin, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Thank you, Mary, for joining us.
Thank you, Lauren.
Today is the feast of St. Josephine Bakhita, a former slave who entered religious life. She is the patron saint of human trafficking. Coming up from the White House to our studio, two Washington insiders tell us about their face-to-face meeting with President Trump. And protecting the unborn, the steps lawmakers in Pennsylvania are taking. The Pennsylvania Senate approves legislation to ban abortions at 20 weeks and limit how second trimester abortions are performed. It's based on model legislation from the National Right to Life Committee, and that's making its way through the nation's state houses. The governor threatens to veto the bill even if the Pennsylvania House approves it. And abortion issues are center stage at the White House. President Trump has hosted roundtables with our next guests, Marjorie Dannenfelser, President, Susan B. Anthony List, and Gerard Robinson, Resident Fellow in Education Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Marjorie, first of all, what did you think of that Pennsylvania abortion ban law?
I would not want to be that governor. This is an incredibly popular bill that's passed in 19 states so far. It's on the verge of getting passed in the United States of America across the board. It's one short vote shy of an overturn of his veto. Clearly very unpopular move.
So if he does veto that, is what you're saying, is he's really going against the rest of his party?
He is, and it's very possible that we could get that vote we need for overriding his veto.
Right, in Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania.
Yeah. All right. Before that, we were talking and watching you walk into the White House to sit down with Donald Trump and talk about pro-life issues. What was that like for you? You've been out of there for 8 years, right?
Oh, it's been a long time since we've been there. Just walking in, I really felt like the pro-life movement was walking into the White House because of his alignment, because of his promises. We were there to talk about Judge Neil Gorsuch and what we plan to do in his confirmation battle. It was just an incredible moment of hope and optimism, excitement.
And do you believe that that Judge Gorsuch will hold up his pro-life stance?
Well, I believe that he cares about the Constitution. I think and that he believes in adhering to its word. I believe that consequence of that is that he will uphold pro-life legislation on the court. He's, in his own words, he believes that the taking of a human life is always wrong. So I think this person is someone that we can trust.
Okay, Gerard, you participated in a different kind of listening session on a different day on Black History Month. What was it like for you to be in that room?
So it was an opportunity for Donald Trump to show the world the number of African Americans he had on staff, either at the White House or in different agencies. Number two, it provided opportunities for people like me to talk about education and why it's important to all children across the board, public school and otherwise, particularly African Americans. And lastly, it gave me an opportunity to also let him and Pence know that I was in charge of leading his education policy implementation team during the transition.
That's wonderful. You are an expert on education policy. You're very much a school choice advocate. How important is school choice in the African American community?
Well, just take a look at polls, whether it's from Phi Delta Kappan or whether it's from Education Next. African American parents, by a whole, support school choice, whether it's in the public schools or whether it's also charter schools. But the reality is Americans practice school choice every day, either by where they live, and that's a way of exercising choice. But for African Americans in particular who want access to great public and private schools, it's made a world of difference.
The two of you have a lot in common here because it seems to me like this issue and your issue as well are now getting a lot of play on center stage. How good is that for defunding Planned Parenthood?
Well, it's everything. It's been buried for years and years and years. Now it's front and center. We have a commitment from the president to defund and reallocate those resources. We have 200 rallies going on around the country at Planned Parenthood clinics right now. The momentum is big and the pockets of Planned Parenthood are deep, and yet we have the White House and we have the House and we have the Senate. I think we're all feeling very optimistic.
And Gerard, do you have that same optimism around school choice now that Betsy DeVos is now our education secretary?
Well, she's committed to school choice both in the public sector and the private sector. One thing I will say about the Obama administration, they were pretty strong on charter schools. So the public sector choice, they were right on. Not so much on the voucher or tax credit side of the fence. With her now as Secretary of Education, and I'm glad that she's in that position, you're going to see the conversation of choice, opportunity, take a what I would call a holistic approach to delivering education.
Marjorie Dannenfelser with the Susan B. Anthony List and Gerard Robinson with the American Enterprise Institute. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Up next, 50 Shades Fallout, the campaign to counteract a new movie and protect women. The sequel to the movie 50 Shades of Grey opens in theaters across the country on Friday. But one group says the film glamorizes sexual and domestic abuse. It's urging people to boycott the movie and donate to a women's shelter instead. Joining us now from that group is Lisa Thompson, Vice President of the organization, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It was a really popular book, still continues to be, and there are sequels to the book as well, and it was a very successful movie. When people talk about it, they snicker or they joke and they talk about how much they like it, but you're saying that the movie is dangerous. Why?
Yes, well, the 50 Shades of Grey franchise normalizes and glamorizes a story of sexual and domestic abuse as if it's a story of true love and romance, but it's anything but a romance. The male lead character, Christian Grey, consistently uses threats, coercion, intimidation, stalking, and even sexual torture to isolate and control his love interest, Anastasia. It's as if he's reading out of an abuser's how-to manual. And ultimately, the story, the franchise, sends the message and teaches women that by being submissive, loving, and enduring through abusive relationships, that they can change their abuser. And that's a pervasive myth in our culture that already causes far too many women to stay in dangerous relationships.
Sure. Why do you think that it is acceptable for popular culture now to glamorize this?
Well, unfortunately, sexual objectification is rampant in our society today. If you look at magazines, television, social media, even
Sure, it's everywhere.
Super Bowl.
You can't escape
Yeah.
it. I'm a mom of kids, and it's everywhere.
Yeah, the Super Bowl halftime
Super Bowl,
shows.
perfect.
Yeah. So you take that and you couple it with the availability and accessibility of internet pornography, and that has really laid the foundation for the acceptance of the 50 Shades of Grey story.
So it sounds like you're going to where they are, and you've launched your own social media campaign. Tell us about that. What's that about?
Yes, so at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, we've launched a campaign in partnership with groups from Canada, Australia, and beyond to send the message that 50 Shades is abuse. And we're inviting people to visit the website 50shadesabuse.com, where they can actually make a pledge and say that they're not going to go to the film, and they can donate to a women's shelter instead.
You know, you are providing a service for women. You're making a statement about a movie that's saying that there is sexual abuse. There are some statistics. Nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused. So you are now talking about a women's shelter. Where can people go, though, if they are in a violent situation?
Well, the first thing we would say is if a person is in an immediate, crisis situation, that they need to call 911. That's
of course
paramount. If it's a non-crisis situation, we would just advise that an individual would reach out to a friend, a trusted loved one, and confide in them, share their story, and that in itself will lift a big burden and begin a process where they can seek
heal, or
right.
they could actually talk to people
Right.
about this, because I think that's part of the stigma, right? They think that they're the only ones it's happening to.
Exactly. And then also, there's an important resource we want to make people aware of. There's a website called domesticshelters.org where people can find a list of domestic shelters across the country. And just backing up to our social media campaign, I wanted to point out that we have social media graphics that we've prepared that people can download and share on their social media, because we think it's really important to send Hollywood the message that sexual and domestic violence aren't sexy.
And it's not okay.
It's not okay.
What do you say to someone who says to you, you're a prude? This isn't about that.
Well, I think, it's funny that comes up so much, because ultimately this is about good sex, not, if anything, they're the ones who are destroying healthy and good sexual relationships, and I think we're the bastions of we really are promoting sex positivity.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. Lisa Thompson, National Center on Sexual Exploitation.
Thank you so much.
Finally tonight, a priest in Glasgow is thanking a late Scottish nun for saving his life. Monsignor Peter Smith has cancer and a blood clot and was given days to live, but he prayed to Margaret Sinclair, who is on her way to becoming a saint. Now, Sinclair was a nun from Scotland who died in 1925. Surgeons say there is no medical explanation for the remarkable recovery. If the Catholic Church authenticates Monsignor Smith's cure, it could pave the way for Margaret to become blessed, just one step away from sainthood. That does it for us this evening. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn, and don't forget, you can see every broadcast of the show on EWTN's YouTube channel. I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night, and God bless.